Hey everybody, thank you so much for clicking on this video. Today we're gonna break down the concept of rep ranges. Specifically, we're gonna break down what rep ranges you should be working in if you have specific training goals. Remember that different programming styles recruit different adaptations, meaning if you are looking to improve your power output, you don't wanna be training in rep ranges that are more so associated with strength endurance. Pretty simple, right? And that's the goal for today. I really wanna simplify all of this for you. Now, I have made slightly longer variations of this video with each training goal really broken down by itself, but today we're just condensing it so it's all in one place so you can really see the difference side by side. Let's start with muscular endurance. This is gonna be a great place for beginners to strength training to start because it's gonna be fairly higher rep, meaning it's gonna give your body a lot of opportunity to kind of build that neuromuscular connection and get you really confident in the movement pattern that you're trying to execute. Typically here we're seeing 2 to 3 sets of 12 plus reps and your rest is gonna be 30 seconds or less. And if we think about this logically, it does make sense why we would program like this for a strength endurance goal. Endurance equals working for a long period of time. So your reps are going to mimic that. There's also definitely an element of quicker recovery with endurance work, so that's why our rest is going to be a little bit shorter at 30 seconds or less. Let's take a programming example here. So if I wanted to program a workout for muscular endurance, one of the things I could play with is circuit training. I'm gonna do a circuit of 3 exercises where we perform each exercise for 30 seconds and then we take 30 seconds off. For the purpose of this example, let's say we're doing a goblet squat into TRX rows into push-ups. So we would do 30 seconds of goblet squats, rest for 30 seconds, 30 seconds of TRX rows, rest for 30 seconds, and then 30 seconds of push-ups, rest for 30 seconds. And then we're gonna do this 3 times through. That's not necessarily the whole workout, it's just one little snippet of a workout. It could be your full workout, but that's not how I program this. Now you might be asking, well, why are we working for 30 seconds? Why are we working for time instead of working for reps? 2 reasons here. If I'm approaching this from a beginner lens, it's typically a lot more feasible for people to stick to a time rather than counting for 12 plus reps. A lot of people are not great at counting right off of the bat, which I know sounds like a crazy thing to say, but you have so many things to think about. I just think it's easier for people to have a timer go off and then they're done rather than counting reps and thinking about where their arm, where their core, where they're bracing, where their legs go. And the other side of this, I picked 30 seconds because typically with most of these exercises, you're gonna hit about 12 to 14 reps within 30 seconds. So it all kind of makes sense. Moving into hypertrophy. So hypertrophy is just a fancy way of saying you wanna build visible muscle mass. That's it. Now again, I find this is a great goal for beginners to weightlifting, but this is also a goal that can be achieved by more advanced lifters. You are again going to have a slightly higher end of your rep range here. So if we're thinking for beginners, you are still gonna get a lot of repetition with your programming. Specifically, you're gonna see 3 to 6 sets of 6 to 12 reps. And rest is typically gonna range from 30 seconds to about 1.5 minutes. Now, there are exceptions to all of those numbers. There's gonna be exceptions to everything that we talk about today, but specifically with hypertrophy, there are some more recent studies that have come out that you can actually attain muscle hypertrophy or visible muscle growth above the 12 rep range, up to 20 reps. But these are just kind of the basic, more standard guidelines that I'm gonna be pointing out today. Let's take a programming example. Something I love doing with hypertrophy work are supersets of opposing muscle groups. So let's take a Bulgarian with a single arm bent over row. I'm gonna do 3 sets of 8 on each side, and I'm gonna rest as needed between sides and between exercises. But the only program rest I'm gonna see in here is 1 minute between your sets. So let's break that down really quickly. We're doing 8 Bulgarians on the left leg, right? We go to do the right, but we realize that aerobically or maybe even muscularly, we need a second to recover. Totally fine. This is really gonna depend on the individual, so I don't like to program rest right here because sometimes you don't need it. But especially for lower body work, if you find you need a breather between sides, I think that's totally fine. Then again, ideally, we're not taking any rest before we go to the bent over row because we're working an upper body movement, which was done on purpose to cut down on the programmed rest time. And then ideally between sides, because this is pretty stable, we don't need any rest. So the only programmed rest we're taking is the minute between the sets. I love programming with supersets for hypertrophy work especially because it's gonna cut down on a lot of the time you need to spend in the gym if you do it well. For this specific superset, we're working a lower body exercise that's gonna target the quads and the glutes, and then we're going right into an upper body exercise that's gonna recruit more of the back. So as the back is working, the legs are already gonna be in about 30 to 60 seconds of rest, and vice versa for the back when we're in that rest time and doing the Bulgarians. Does that make sense? Do we see how we're how we're programming that? Let's move into power training. Now, I like to introduce at least the bare minimum of power work with every single one of my clients, but speed strength is definitely challenging for people. We're gonna lose our power at nearly double the rate that we lose our strength as we age. And quite frankly, if you don't use it, you lose it. And if you lose something, it's a lot harder to do it. I mean, look at how we spend our day as adults. Most of us sit at desks Monday through Friday. We come home, we cook, we clean. Like, we're not spending a lot of time doing speed-related activities unless we are, I don't know, I guess living a life that requires speed-related activities. And this is important because it has a lot of crossover into things like our reaction time, our ability to absorb force, our landing mechanics. And, you know, there are so many examples of crossover of that into daily life. And if we're not training for that ever, we're more likely to get injured. Now, in terms of programming here, this is where we start to see a little difference from our strength endurance and our hypertrophy programming. We're gonna see 3 to 5 sets of 1 to 5 reps, so very, very low. We'll talk about why in just a moment. And our rest time is gonna be much higher at 2 to 5 minutes. So you see the work to rest ratio is a little bit different here. In terms of why the reps are so low, again, we're thinking of generating as much force as possible as quickly as possible. If we're trying to do that for 10, 12, 15, 20 reps, we're gonna lose our speed. We're gonna lose our force, right? So we're losing the part of power training that makes it powerful. And if you can do it for that long, you're not training power. You're doing strength endurance. There we go. Both are fine. Both are great goals, they're just different. And on the cellular level, they have different adaptations, as well as on the performance level, they're going to have different adaptations. And then same thing with our rest, it's just been shown in studies that we need to recover longer from producing speed strength exercises. Let's look at a programming example. Now, I'm gonna be the first to say it, most of the time with my clients who are general population, I'm not taking 2 minutes of rest between power exercises. I might do a superset of like a power and a strength, or a power and a core, a power and accessory. So we have a little bit more of that rest time built in, but most of the time, because we're not training for optimization and I want to keep people entertained, it's going to be a minute, maybe 90 seconds. So the bare minimum that I'm going to program with every single client across the board are pogos. Pogos are light, springy hops where the goal is to have as little ground contact as possible. So something I like to do is do 3 sets of 10 seconds with a 50-second recovery. So basically I'm putting a minute on the clock, you work for 10 seconds, you take the rest of the minute as your rest. Set 1, we're gonna work a little bit lower intensity, so just kind of barely leaving the floor. Think of it like a light jump rope. Set 2, I'm gonna challenge them to get a little bit more height, a little bit less ground time. And set 3, we're gonna try and touch our head to the ceiling without bending the knees too much. So really working on that stretch shortening cycle. Let's move into max strength. I would say that max strength is an advanced goal because you need to be able to lift heavy enough to stimulate specific changes or specific adaptations on the cellular level with good form. So you need to have at least a baseline of understanding of how to move your body in space in these different exercises, not only with good form, but under very challenging load. Typically, we're gonna see 2 to 6 sets of 6 or less reps, and our rest time is gonna be 2 to 5 minutes. So honestly, not that different from power training. It's just that your speed is gonna be very different. When we're working power, this is our speed strength. So we're gonna be working quickly. When we're working max strength, because the loads are so much heavier than working with power, it's gonna take a lot more effort to move the weight. Therefore, you're typically gonna be working at much slower speeds. Again, one is not better than the other, they are just different. Looking at a programming example, let's just take a good old-fashioned trap bar deadlift. We're gonna do 5 sets of 5, and our rest is gonna be 2-minute rest between sets. It's simple, and it's maybe boring for some, but it's quite effective. So if you have a specific question about programming, leave it down below. I am more than happy to help you figure that out. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future videos, and I will see you in the next one.